All right, you guys, thanks for coming online tonight for Miasms Part 2. So, you guys are dedicated. This is awesome. I'm glad, Miasms really is foundational to homeopathy. And once you really start to let it sink in, it's such an important and useful tool for reducing the full variety of remedies to smaller groups of remedies from which to prescribe from. And a lot of homeopathy is that how can we take this huge breadth of possibility and reduce it down to something that is understandable, right? And so we do that with plants, animals, and minerals, and nosodes. So we get a general feeling when a nosode is needed or a plant is needed or an animal is needed. Um, do you guys have a good feeling for what that is, or should I cover that? Plant, animal, mineral versus nosode. Just pop on and say if you don't. And then the miasms are a way of, and then we can combine these ways of grouping remedies, and then we can kind of narrow down and focus in on what it is that we feel needs treatment. Cover it. Okay, so we started with the mineral remedies the first quarter, and that was 15 classes. And the mineral remedies are really about when we are trying to help if you think about what a mineral is, it's about our structure and how we are in deficiency states. We get blood tested and it shows our deficiency states, our iron deficiency states, our states of kind of rigidity and structure and how we fit into structure of society at large. So I taught minerals from a Scholten point of view. So Jan Scholten is a Dutch homeopath, and he really describes minerals as an evolution or a procession of elements that increase in weight and increase in size. And as they increase in weight and size down the periodic table of elements, we increase in complexity, sophistication, and depth. So the very simple hydrogen and helium are very, spacey, simple, at one, it's kind of where we go when we die, energies. And then when we come into our bodies and learn about form, we start to come into, the carbon series and the silica series. And the silica series is about, relationships and how do we relate with people. So the mineral remedies are about our structure and deficiency states or issues, malfunctioning of our structure based on how our bodies are functioning. Like, for example, MTHFR is a malfunction of our methylation, our sulfation. So there's that way of looking at it. And then there's also the deeper complexity that we fit into these mineral remedies based on a sense of deficiency in relationships, or a sense of connectivity in relationships, how we connect in relationships. The silver series right here was all about ideas, creativity, how I show myself as beautiful and something to contribute in the world. And then the lanthanide series is all about my own self-autonomy. Like, I'm the judge of my progress in life. Like, I'm the one who, figures all the things out. Autonomy is where I thrive, is the lanthanide. And then the orange series is very much about power and wealth and influence, and how I feel that, how I engage with that. And then the uranium series is about radiation and how I radiate, how my egoic structure is kind of broken down, and now I am kind of emanating intuition, magic, and my old soul energy. So we spent 15 classes talking about this. I could probably re-review all the classes with you guys. But that was the minerals. Mineral people generally present as being very organized, very structured. They're linear. When they talk to you, they start from the beginning. They have an ending. They're not super complicated necessarily. And they like, to fit into society. Well, let me not say that. So that's the mineral people. Whereas the plant energy is very much about, plants are very sensitive, right? Plants survive based on how they engage with their environment through sensitivity. So plants are sensitive to the sun, to the weather, to the minerals, to everything around them, and they shift, their survival strategy based on what they're sensing in their environment around them. Plants on this planet are here as our medicine. They are here to be a reflection of all the various ways in which our body, which is sensitive, goes into imbalance and can be rebalanced again with the right plant remedy. So plant remedies really are our medicine for when we are feeling a lot of sensitivities and sensations. And plant people are generally sensitive and complaining about their sensitivities, or complaining about like some sort of pain that has a particular quality to it. And plant remedies are wonderful for that. And so we haven't talked in depth about plant remedies yet, but I can do that next year if you guys still want to learn from me. So plant remedies, that person will be like, so I feel, and then when you touch me, that really hurts. And hurting me means that I just feel really alone when you abandon me. And it makes me want to kind of just eat some ice cream so I can kind of comfort myself. And so that's the plant remedy. It's different from maybe kind of a linear, structured mineral remedy person. And then the animals tend to be, it's like we give animal remedies when there's these larger behavior traits, these larger survival based animalistic fears and animated personality types. The animals survive based on their sexuality and attracting the mate and attacking or retreating. And when those energies come up strong, and it could be a mouse that's like really scared and needs to like hide away as soon as somebody comes along, needs to kind of like go to the corner and hide, or it could be like, a coyote that's just always like trying to like grab something, so going into the sensation of the person can show us this like really cool animal remedy state too. So there's plant, animal, minerals, and we haven't talked about animals yet too, and we could do that next year. And then there's the nosodes, which was this quarter. And the nosodes are the feeling that like something's come on to me that's not me. It's like it feels like I've got a layer of stuff that's just, I'm no longer myself. This is not mine. It's like it's that feeling of biofilm, of just like there's something that's just coating me. It's not mine. People feel this way when they have Lyme disease, when they have Bartonella, when they have mold, right? All of this stuff, you're just like, ugh, this does not feel mine. And what's coming up and out of you is the voice or the presentation of another energy that is not yours. When you're connected to your animal self, you're yourself. Like that's your animal being. That's your like that's your soul animal. When you're in your mineral state, you may be insecure in a calcarb, or you may be like a feeling like an angry ferrum, but you're still yourself. And even when you're a plant remedy and you need a plant remedy, you're still feeling your feelings and expressing the sensations of your body that need healing. With a nosode, you're just like, it's like you've got to clear all the layers of stuff that is not yours. And that can come up a lot of the time when we're open or when our immune systems are down. Something comes in that is not ours, right? And eventually, I do want to talk about entities that will come up in our second to last class when something spiritual kind of comes in that's not yours, in the parasites class. So, those are those larger categories. This book, Sankaran Schema, is all about showing you like what these larger categories are. The book of life that that I put together is all about showing things in categories. When you're intuitive, you can muscle test through the categories too. If you have First, you got to kind of really understand and grasp the category as well and understand it from a conceptual place. But then you can also just ask, if you're really open container and you're connected to your guidance, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Does this person need a plant, animal, mineral, or a nosode? And then what I'm here to teach you today is like how to find maybe a miasm to further focus in the treatment. Okay, what miasm is this person? And you're going to feel it. The miasm is an energy, an intensity, and a pace at which a person reacts to their stress. Okay, so I want you guys all to just think about like what stressed you or your kid today or yesterday or just like really recently. Like, how did that stress come in? And what was that response? Okay. And so the feeling, like if you're just like thinking about what was that stress today? Okay. So for example, Eva, she had a great day, but she was stressed today when Ryan left and she didn't want daddy to leave. And her response was to kind of whine and pout and like, poor me. And she was like miserable, but not really putting much of a fuss because she knew she couldn't do anything about it. And it was just like, she didn't put a lot of energy into it, but she still felt kind of like miserable, like, oh, why me? Pouty, pouty, pouty. Right? That's just like a little bit of a response, but it's like this kind of steady response that fits a miasm. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that today. So think about your family and how do they respond to stress or a specific kid, and the energy, the pace, the quality to how they're responding, and let's talk about that. Okay. All right. Oh, we've got 21 people. All right, you guys. We're going to do this. So you guys remember last week's class, okay? So last week's class, we talked about 3 main miasms. Sora, what is the miasm of that we all have. And it's the energy of I'm in this deficiency state and I'm like could be weak. Like things could come in and take away what little that I have. And so I have to just kind of keep working and keep going to maintain the fact that I'm losing body energy. I'm losing my resources constantly, right? This is the state when we stepped out of the Garden of Eden. We needed to start working and just we're in deficiency state and we need to build up. We need to build our homes and build up our bodies, right? So any questions about Sora? A lot of basic mineral remedies are at their core Soric. And when the remedy is about, I'm afraid to lose money, I'm afraid to just lose my energy, I'm afraid to lose, what little I have left, I've got to kind of just maintain. A lot of mineral remedies are there. When I wanted to emphasize that oftentimes when you see a remedy, it's listed under all the miasms, because a remedy like sulfur that is a big polycrest, you could describe it as many miasms, right? So, but still, the soric miasm could need sorinum. Okay, so Hahnemann developed this idea of the miasms because he saw that people were getting stuck, and he saw that this stuckness was coming from an unresolved disease that never healed, that got passed down from generation to generation, right? And so if a disease is suppressed or not really like truly healed by the body passes down that inability to deal with that disease to the next generation. And you have, when you give the nosode that says what that disease is, it helps the body respond. And we've been talking about that in this class, right? So I'm going to put a spin on that in today's class a little bit. So we've got, all the skin diseases and all the deficiency state, diseases have to do with Sora. Psychosis from last week was all about like, all right, I no longer feel like I need to survive by kind of working hard and collecting. And, my survival strategy is being out there, connecting, being popular, being extroverted. Like I'm now out of my container. My container of my body is built. It is what it is. If something comes into my body like a disease, I'm just gonna hide it and act like I'm perfect. And so that's the energy of psychosis, the energy of Metarhinum, or Thuya, or even Silica. Okay. And a lot of us have that energy as well. This is the energy of fake it till you make it. It's a great place to be in, to really be atop of your game. But all of us know that a lot of people who are top of their game sweep a lot under the rug, right? So it's all a show. So for most people who you think they've got it all together, it's a show, because there are parts of them that aren't together. And homeopathy, we say, okay, let's fix that. I see that. And then lastly, the third pillar that I taught last week was the syphilitic miasm. Okay, so this is the destructive disease that goes right to the neurological system. Syphilis would make you blind, make you crazy, make you suicidal. And so diseases that are of that nature are called syphilitic. So this miasm is where we really had to take a really big, deep breath in, because there is a decent amount of energy in this class that is syphilitic. And when we resonate with the syphilitic, we have to recognize that we are in a loop that is keeping us in a perpetual state of self-destruction and self-sabotage. And to recognize that, and then to find that place in you that you can get centered and no longer self-sabotage, is key. It's key. It's like, it's deeper than the homeopathy even. It's spiritual. And if there's anything I've learned from treating so many people, is that really helping people tap into the love in their heart and their higher self is really helpful for people in the syphilitic state. And the thing with people in the syphilitic state is that a lot of people coming to homeopathy are coming from a syphilitic place, because the thing is, when people are psoric, they can get better with a round of biomed or a round of antibiotics, like basic simple treatments bounce them back easier. Even when you're psychotic, you can sweep things under the rug. When you start to roll downhill towards the cancer miasm, the tuberculinic miasm, and the syphilitic miasm, that's when you're like, I can't sweep things under the rug. I need light, I need joy, I need to be centered in my heart, and I need homeopathy to save what's happening here. Or or death, right? Or death. It's like, okay, we're going downhill. All right, it's like go back, try to get back to the light, or like roll, 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 and it's over, right? And so it's like you got to choose. So, syphilinum, incredibly important remedy for some people. So we're going to be talking about the states in between these three pillars: psoric, psychotic, and syphilitic. It's funny it's called psychotic, right? Like you think of like psycho crazy, um, but it's really spelled differently. And I've never researched or found out what the connection is between P psychotic and S psychotic. But for sure, if someone's truly psychotic, they could be really truly crazy. It depends on your perspective. We love crazy people. We love Samanthas from Sex and the City, who are really psychotic. We love them. And we love our celebrities, but we also understand that the life they lead isn't necessarily healthy either. All right, so I'm going to share the notes now. Um, All right. So, my house right now, I just wanted to kind of give you like a quick example of the three miasms that you're going to see in like the world of people around you all the time. So, we have carpenters on my house, and I was just thinking like, how could I like explain to you in an illustrative way? So my dad was the Soric one, right? My dad wakes up at 7 in the morning, has the same breakfast every morning, goes down, gets his coffee, goes down to the work site, and he sweeps, and he does sweeping for like 2 hours until he gets like everything, and then he spends time worrying about the safety of the carpenters that are up on the roof, and he's handing them things for like until 5 o'clock, and then it's over and he's done, and he comes home, eats dinner, goes to bed at like 6. All right, that's Sorry. He's done that his whole life. Okay, this is like very self-preserving, very routine, very mineral. My dad has needed the remedy nickel, hepar sulf, calc sulf, cali carb. No, not calc sulf, calc carb and cali carb. Really very sore. Grew up on a farm in the Midwest. Okay, so really about self-preserving, kind of weak, cold. And then we've got the carpenter he's like up on the roof, never had an injury. He works, and then he spends like his weekends running ultra marathons, running like 100 miles, and then comes back to work like supercharged, and like is just full of energy and super positive, very connecting. Um, um, Fell in love with a European woman. She got pregnant, had a baby right away, took the baby back to Europe, leaving him here in the dust. And that's like something he doesn't talk about. It's just this like sweep it under the rug. It just happened. He fell in love. This is what happens. Right. Um, and so, he just like goes into a marathon and gets like second after his like first time running it. So he's like super psychotic. And then our third carpenter was this guy who was his friend, our psychotic carpenter's friend, who was an ex-bartender, comes onto the job site, doesn't really, looks at us, kind of like doesn't look away, looks away, doesn't really engage. I invite him to dinner all the time, always says no. Our psychotic one comes to dinner all the time. And this guy like find out he's an ex-heroin addict. He's just like rushing through the work, and finally we let him go, and then we find out 2 weeks later that he partially cut 2 fingers off, right? So alone, working. So this is syphilitic. So these examples are around you. Do you guys get this, right? Get this now. Make sure I have the chat. All right. So The variation that Sankaran and brought some depth into this is that, you know, Hahnemann is like, okay, this disease was suppressed, and so therefore it gets passed on. Sankaran says, well, it's our susceptibility and this survival strategy that we are living with that attracts the disease, right? Attracts the bacteria. So as long as we're this psychotic person who's, you know, connecting and probably maybe like extra sexual and like doesn't mind having, you know, multiple sexual partners because of their connectivity, you know, they attract in a disease that limits their sexual activity, right? They're going to attract in gonorrhea or chlamydia. And then you kind of kill it off with some antibiotics, but you're going to keep attracting in sexually transmitted diseases as long as you maintain that behavior, maintain that survival strategy. You know, if your survival strategy is having sex with as many people, then maybe you'll eventually find somebody who, you know, you don't need to do that with. Right? And so what happens when we just continually, you know, think that we're getting rid of disease with vaccines and antibiotics? Nothing, you know. Uh, Nature around us creates the disease that wants to bring us into balance. You know, if we're syphilitic, we're self-destructive by nature, a disease will come in and say, okay, I'll snuff you out if that's what you want. You know, unless you really decide, I'll make you really decide you want to live, you know? So that's really what we're seeing here. Um, the disease isn't to blame. The delusional pattern is what is to blame, right? And then Sankran says, you know, we've had war, you know, and conflict and things that happen, and we get these survival strategies, you know, say like somebody breaks into your house and you're like, get this PTSD, and then you have the PTSD that just keeps looping. It plays itself out. And what we want to do with the miasms is to like unhinge that intense survival strategy so it's not so stuck. Sankran writes, in order to diminish our delusions, the body accepts an infection to live out our delusion, right? And so, the infection also allows us to be accepted by society, so the behavior is not so abnormal, right? If you're just kind of a psychotic, crazy person, and people think you're like manic, you know, manic, crazy, bipolar person, but then people are like, what is wrong with them? But once you put a diagnostic label, it makes it somewhat acceptable. You get the compassion of society, right? Whether this is good or bad, you guys can discuss. But to a certain degree, I do, you know, the diagnostic labeling is a limitation because then we play that out further, you know, and that can be a real limitation for autism and diagnoses like that. Well, you know, you can. It's a relief also, you know. Parents are like, oh, I feel so relieved now that I know that my kid has tested positive for seizures. Now I know what was really happening, you know. And that's true too, you know. So I don't think I can judge either way. On both counts, help and a hindrance, right? Because when the diagnosis is also a way of limiting down the possibility. Okay, now that I have a diagnosis, now I can see maybe what's really, oh, there's some limited medicines here, right? And so when we kind of try to limit and contain and see what's happening, it's helpful and it can be a hindrance, you know? So this is why with miasms, I'm also careful. I'm like saying, this is helpful, but you could also like be other miasms too. Yeah, The reason for cancer is the attitude of cancer. And, this is a kind of a new age thing where we attract in our life. And that can be a double-edged sword too, because it's both empowering to know that we can create our reality. And it's also can be like really guilt producing for some people who, like, wait, I created this. And then they put on a heavy weight of responsibility on themselves, right? Do you guys see that? Yeah. I keep myself in the survival pattern of my childhood. Even as an educated professional, I attract it and keep it going. And it's comfortable. It's just it's what you were raised with. And this is why miasms go from generation to generation, is because it's what we saw. It's what we saw our parents do to survive. Monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, you have to break the loop, and homeopathy is wonderful for it, but it's awareness of the loop, and if you can step back so you're not in it. All of these things are ways for you to like step back out of being in your life and in your patterning and see it so you can break those cycles. And this is what I hope is really revolutionary for you, to just actually see like, oh, there is a pace and an intensity to which I deal with everything. Does that keep attracting in problems? If I'm always in like, gotta fix it mode, something's gonna happen, oh my God, it's gonna be an emergency. You're gonna, like you might have emergency after emergency after emergency. That's why you have like accident prone people, right? It's just, the state of attracts it in. Yeah. Yeah. So um so he writes, in the West today, we find increasingly incurable and intractable conditions replacing older, purely infectious disease. There's a high incidence of autoimmune and cancer. What is alarming is that trends show that these conditions, formerly the domain of old age, are now showing up in younger people with greater frequency. I would say this was to be expected. It's just we're not healing the delusion that attracts the disease when we're just killing something with antibiotics. And I'd have to say, there's definitely cases, pandas cases, autism cases, but you see it more with pandas because it's more of like an acute disease that you cure, but where you've dealt with all of the physical reality of that disease, everything's fine. And then you see where the true delusion is on a spiritual level. It's on a spiritual plane. And to break that spiritual plane delusion takes some real spiritual work, like forgiveness, letting go, loving, getting centered. Okay. So some of these miasms are more important than others. And then next week, the really important miasms, like the cancer miasm, the tuberculosis miasm, I'm going to just dive into a little bit more. So I'm kind of washing over this miasm several times, just so it kind of keeps kind of coming in from different angles. Yeah, limbic retraining. Awesome. Good stuff. All right. So the acute miasm. So I actually, you guys can see this like little arrow thing here. So these are the miasms kind of all in a row in order from like acute intensity survival to like deeply destructive. So on this side, it's like we're hopeful, we're self-preserving, we're optimistic, we're dealing with acute health issues. And then on this side, it's more hopeless, pessimistic, pointless. we're dealing with chronic health issues. And so we are, when we go more and more into unhealth, we're moving down this line. When we're moving back towards health, we're moving up the line. Although the acute miasm could happen at any point. So really that shouldn't really be anywhere. But the acute miasm Sankaran introduced, he kind of came up with that because he knew that there's this category of remedies for when things are really fight or flight intensity, like, you're being chased by the bear, somebody's breaking in your house, you've run to the emergency room because, you're screaming your head off because you broke your leg, this is acute, intense threat of massive proportion, great danger to the life. Blood loss is happening. Someone's got a gun, right? This is, you guys already know these remedies: aconite, belladonna, stramonium, and arnica, okay? These are our emergency remedies that we run around with in our car: aconite, arnica, belladonna, stramonium, fight or flight, when a stress kind of comes in on some level, even when it's a cold, to a certain degree, the body reacts to it like a shock or like a fear. Even then, aconite can help, right? So, when we're doing sensation process, and this is why I love sensation process, is, you imagine that you are the child. And so oftentimes people will be like, yeah, my kid is stressed, but you don't know like what the stress really is like until you really ask the parent, or you really go into like what it feels like, and when people close their eyes and they say, yeah, my child was stressed, and you're like, okay, tell me about when they were the most stressed. And they're like, I think of the delivery, and I almost, I have lost a lot of blood, and they took him out and they took him to the NICU, and they stuck a lot of needles in him, and it was really scary. And he was like, like what was going on, like fight or flight, that feeling, that like electrical fear, you treating that child, 10 years later with aconite for those fears that happen during delivery can be awesome and amazing. Stramonium is a remedy where kids, like, they just have they walk through life like with big eyes, kind of like dilated maybe in a way, and like they're just fearful, and they talk in like a whisper, and like, I don't know if this, could happen to me. Erin, what's that TV show that you guys like about the kids that get taken to the other world? There's the main kid in that total stramonium state. Like he's been like PTSD. He's been kidnapped by a monster, and it's just like Stranger Things. Yeah. So, there's people who are chronically in a state of acute fight or flight on some level within them. They're living it for years of their life, and it's tragic. One of my most amazing PTSD cases was when I was, this is dark, just to preface this, in starting off in my practice, and a woman came into my office and didn't say anything. She had thick glasses, acne. She walked with her back against the wall into my office. I couldn't get a word out of her. So I got her on the table, and she just started to shake. When you shake, when you literally tremble, it's a true release. That's what animals do, right? When they're like being chased down by the wolf, and then they get free from the wolf, they'll lay down and they'll just tremble. And the trembling is a true release of the stress, and actually allowing your body to just tremble is a whole release of the nervous system that's incredibly powerful. So this girl started trembling and then sobbing for like 30 minutes. I didn't even know what to do. She did this for 3 appointments, not even knowing what happened. And then I find out that 10 years previous, a guy broke into her house, held her at gunpoint, and raped her, put the gun in her mouth. And she lived with that every day of her life. She worked with autistic kids. That was where that was her comfort zone, was working with autistic kids. So thank God I gave her stramonium followed by Natmure, and she told me everything, which was the biggest part. So, whew, not fun to be in chronic acute state. And clearly, they're helpful for acutes too. Sora, we've talked about. Typhoid miasm is it's useful for you to kind of conceptualize. It's not as useful for me to kind of give remedies. It's not a huge miasm. I don't give typhoid disease. So what Sangharan did was, he's like, there's an energy that's like the feeling of between being kind of acute or soric and psychotic, but what's that feeling? And then he tried to find the disease that came in and matched it. Oh, what is this disease really about? I really think that the typhoid miasm could also be called influenza miasm. So in India, where he's from, it's maybe typhoid, but for us, it would be like the flu miasm. And it's really about like this stress is coming in, and I'll just have to like really battle it out, and I'll get through it at the end. We're hopeful. We know we're gonna get through it. It's like this guy on the bike, like, I'm riding up the hill and I just got to keep pumping and pumping and pumping, and I'll get to where I need to go. It's like Soric, but you've got to put in, he's like, you got to put in this intense, concentrated effort to just get through it, right? It's like, okay, you fell off the boat, there's the island, like swim, and then you'll get to where you need to go. So the feeling is, I just got to like push through this. Okay, birth is really like this too, right? And you've got a intense situation. You've got to push through with concentrated effort and kind of an impatient. So this is nux vomica. Do you guys know nux vomica energy? It's like work, hard. Stock market's gonna close. We better get this all done, and then boom, it's done, right? So we all have kind of been through this. This is kind of like Sora. He categorizes this miasm as bryonia, rust tox, gelsemium, nux vomica, a lot of like flu remedies. And people who are soric. So like my dad, for example, who worked in the city, he was also under deadlines all the time, and he worked at the World Trade Center, and he was such a nux vomica too, just really had to kind of push through it and got through it, and then come home and be irritable and, I've done enough. I just need to rest. Oh God. And now I'm kind of soric, so I just did a lot of work, and now it's time for me to sit on the couch and, take a rest. So that's that. You guys got that? Okay. And then, so we're still in before psychotic. The malarial miasm is the energy of like what Evo was today. So it's this energy of like, I'm going to be miserable, but I'm going to get through it. I don't have like it in me to kind of push through really intensely, but I'm going to be miserable and just kind of whine about it, and then I'll get through it. This is the miasm of like gut stuff and malaria and a lot of like kind of spirochetal, energy and worms. So this is actually a very useful miasm to understand, because according to Sangharan, this is the miasm where there's a periodicity. There's like, it comes and it's oppressive and awful, and then it goes. And once a month it comes. It's kind of like our periods, our malarial miasm, until we kind of heal them and they're no longer problematic. But I'll present this to you a little bit later in class, but there's a page of keywords. Maybe I'll copy and send this out to you. Keywords according to all of these miasms in Sankaran schema. And the keywords for the malarial miasm is stuck, intermittent attack, persecuted, colic, harassed, hindered, obstructed. You know, and so many people get stuck in their healing when they're dealing with their parasites. Okay, this is where a lot of healing gets stuck, is like, the parasites, they keep coming back, they keep harassing me, they keep hindering me. And so it's like, what do we have to do to heal those parasites is realize that we have the power to choose to not feel harassed and hindered and obstructed by whatever it is in life. A lot of people who are unhappy in their jobs and have like a boss who's like, you know, an asshole, you know, they attract this energy into their life. Oh, right. Somebody asked pyrogen. So pyrogen is listed right here under the typhoid miasm, and that's pyrogenium. It's basically the remedy from rotting meat bacteria. So it's like food poisoning, like, no, but I'll get through it, you know? So it's good for that kind of, yeah, E. coli would probably be in this category too. So, okay. So malarial miasm really, you know, this is where Sina lies, China. China, the remedy for malaria. Why do people get so stuck here? And I think it's because we're used to being stuck. We're used to not being, you know, kind of you know, obstructed. There's so many things in life that get in the way, and you know. So he says the malarial miasm is you feel this threat coming up intermittently in a situation which cannot be changed. Oh, I feel stuck, hindered, unfortunate, tormented from time to time, and I'm powerless and dependent in this situation. Okay. I have to put up with this. God, I just have to put up with you all the time. You know, we have to really be careful of the energy that we bring into our homes and show our kids, and just like, you know, and how that is reflective of the disease states that we're trying to heal with, you know, herbs and stuff. So we're always going to be having parasites if we act in this kind of blaming, stuck, you know, way. And then the ringworm miasm. So this is like kind of a useful miasm, but not that useful because it's so similar to psychosis, and it's kind of similar to Sora. I don't find it to be a super important differentiation. And it's partly because ringworm is really hard to treat if some of you have it. And I've given the ringworm miasm here. So that the energy of the ringworm miasm is like the energy that we come at, the pace and intensity that we come at with like wanting to lose weight, but never really losing weight. Like I want to lose weight. I'm going to try a diet here, try a little bit, but not really get through it. And okay, I'm fine. I like, you know, or like, you know, it's this trying, but like it's accepting too. Like I'm just accepting the way that things are. So ringworm as a disease is that it's this like intense itching sometimes, but I'm also resigned to accept it. You know, herpes, which is psychotic, is like, I'm forced to accept this. This is something I have. I'm just going to hide it and have to deal with it. You know, ringworm, our body may try and fight it off with itching sometimes. So it's this feeling of like putting in some effort, but then you kind of fail at dealing with it, and then you just accept it. So I didn't think too much of this miasm, partly because Ryan has ringworm. And it bothers me. Like, you know, sometimes I will get this kind of tinea energy from him, and I get itchy right away. Like, I can't deal with it. I'm too sensitive, and I've got to, like, you know, take a remedy or use some tea tree oil or something to clear it out. For him, it's like been there for a really long time. He's got the toenails that are kind of, you know, fungally. And then really recently, just this past year, his fungal toenails started to heal up after he had done everything. He had done the tea tree oil, he had done like filing it down, he had done, you know, I don't know, everything to try and get rid of it. And we're like, why is it going away? And I believe it's because he's getting past the ringworm miasm. And the reason he's getting through the ringworm miasm is because he's working nonstop on this house in a super psychotic way. He can't stop. He has to keep going. Like, he's in like go mode with house building like he's never been before. In the past, he's always like done things and then stepped back from them. He's like tried to become an acupuncturist and then didn't. Tried to become like a screenwriter and then didn't. Tried to kind of do all these different things and just like didn't do them. And like now he's like a builder and like that's what he wants to do, and he's in it and he's in his fire and he's passionate about it, and every day he's going at it. And the ringworm's going away. The toenails are getting better. That makes sense? So, you know, it's kind of like that with weight loss, you know. If we really, really keep going at it and we're really sticking with it, we will lose weight, I think. And there aren't a ton of remedies listed under the ringworm miasm, so. And the psychotic miasm we've talked about, but I will review it again later. Okay, the cancer miasm. So the cancer miasm, so now that we've hit psychosis. So psychosis is where we are like kind of at the top of our performance, and we only have one way to go, either, you know, down or retire. You know, I think I like it when people retire at the top of their game in a way, but then there's always those like old, like, you know, rock stars that kind of keep going and they do all of these concerts in Las Vegas and stuff, and you're like, they're still going. Those people are probably in like the tubercular leprosy miasms. You know, people who like retire at the top of the game and they don't want to be anything less than but at the top. That's very psychotic. Does that make sense? So, oops, here. When we start to get to the cancer miasm, you know, psychosis is like, I'm connecting, I'm top of my game, I'm like being the perfect person. And then cancer miasm is like taking it one step further, where you start to lose touch with yourself on the inside. You start to lose touch with who you really are, and you start to juggle too many balls because of society's expectations, because you think you can do it, because you think that you're superhuman. You believe that, you know, other people's perceptions of you as this superhuman person is what counts more than your own self-preservation. Does that make sense? So you do things beyond what you're capable of, and you do that, you know, where you start to then develop the susceptibility for cancer. Until cancer, what is cancer? Cancer is cells in the body that have lost sense, that are replicating and doing too much replication, out of control, and losing touch with the identity of what is my body, what's not my body. So you develop these tumors or these cancer cells that have lost a sense of themselves, like who the identity of this person is. What's my authenticity, right? And so to heal cancer, we got to get really authentic with what our body needs, what's true to ourselves, and do less. And I'll talk way more about cancer next week, the cancer miasm, but this is super fundamental. Almost all chronic disease at some point hits this miasm and needs the nosode or remedies from within this nosode, or remedies within this miasm, right? And so the carcinosin miasm contains within it remedies that are about neglecting the self and doing too many things for others, and suppressing my emotions in order to be perfect, in order to be the person that I'm supposed to be. Who's done that? All right. You know, the cancer miasm is not a hard one to deduce in people, because when you ask them to close their eyes and take a deep breath in and out, you ask, what's stressful to you? Chaos. They don't like chaos. What makes you feel better? Control. You know, the words chaos and control are real keywords for this miasm. Sankaran lists control. The cancer miasm is control, perfection, fastidious, or like super clean, beyond one's capacity, superhuman, great expectations, stretching beyond capacity, order, control, loss of control, self-control, right? So when we try to be too controlling, and then we lose touch with, you know, it's because we're trying to kind of maintain all these boundaries, we lose touch with the flow. Would you see eating disorders here? Totally, absolutely. Eating disorders. So let's just think of an eating disorder, okay? So an eating disorder could, you know, come up as almost all miasms. So far, you could have somebody who she was raped at gunpoint and develops an eating disorder because that's what makes her feel safe, you know? And so that could be acute miasm. You could have someone who develops an eating disorder because they've been abused by a parent and feel persecuted by that parent. And it's the parasites in them that have you know, are really kind of creating this eating disorder, and the eating disorder comes and goes whenever they see their parent. You could have someone with an eating disorder who is like Miss Perfect, Miss America, who needs to be perfectly skinny for her competition, and she's like throws up all the time, and that's like psychotic eating disorder. And then you have like the cancer miasm eating disorder, which is somebody who you know, like is needing to, a lot of people with the cancer miasm love like these super controlling diets. They'll become vegan or vegetarian and be like super anal about it, you know, because it controls them and it's good for the planet, and it makes me look good to be vegan and vegetarian and look good, and it's good for the planet. And very cancer miasm, you know, and to be like super controlling. So yeah, you know, and then, you know, tubercular miasm could be like, I've got an eating disorder. We haven't gotten to this yet, but because, you know, I need to eat things really, really fast before somebody else gets all the food. So, um, yeah. Is that, you get that? You know, and you could say that take any diagnosis, Western medicine diagnosis does not take these things into account. It doesn't take the speed and the intensity and the degree of deterioration. In homeopathy, because it does, it'll bring so much more awareness to what needs to be healed. You know, a classic picture of the cancer miasm is a little girl. He has a case of a little girl who took entirely on her shoulders the task of getting her alcoholic father to go to work in the morning and her sick mother to get out of bed to bring order into her chaotic life. You know, kids who've had really chaotic upbringings have a strong feeling for control, because they had to kind of, you know, maintain the order, because their parents maybe were really, you know, syphilitic, you know, on some level. right? And so cancer miasm, you see carcinosin, arsenicum, anacardium, ignatia, staph aureus, a lot of remedies a lot of you guys already know and are fundamental for releasing suppressed emotions that have been held in an attempt to be in control and perfect. Would all kinds of alcoholic or drug addicted, yeah. Um, Alcoholic and drug addicted parents could be, variable too. Generally, I would think a lot of alcoholic and drug addicted parents are kind of on the syphilitic place because that's a destructive thing to do when you're a parent. You're not about the self-preservation of yourself or your child. You're about destroying something in yourself. So I would say there's something syphilitic, but the syphilitic parent could create, and I'm treating a case right now of very drug addicted parents who had the mother is very cancer miasm. But as I treat the cancer and all that she suppressed from having grown up, all this stuff comes out, and you have all of the part of her that was this needy child comes forward to the homeopath and wants hand holding, someone to talk to, and and so you have to be aware that sometimes when you give these remedies, you're taking the lid off of the control mechanism so that they can release what they've been holding in for so long. Right. So tubercular. So you guys, I will go into more depth in cancer miasm next week. Tubercular miasm. So tubercular miasm, a lot of us, it's like, I would say like a lot of us lie between the psychotic and syphilitic miasms with periods of the malarial miasm and acute miasm tossed in there. Tubercular miasm is life is stressful, and when it's stressful, I'm going to travel and leave it all behind. Or it's like I'm feeling a little bit trapped and claustrophobic in life right now. It's getting too routine, too boring. Life is short. I want to enjoy it. I'm going to go and travel. Yeah, it's a lot of us at the core. A lot of us that have kind of a calc phos. So when there's some sort of instability in your actual physical structure, in your actual bones, like if you have what is it called? Oh my God. When your spine isn't straight, scoliosis. When you have scoliosis, you feel unsettled in your body, right? Something's not stable, and so you can't be settled just being settled in one spot. You feel like you either have to be constantly moving, or there's some discomfort, or there's some dissatisfaction. And so the tubercular people are generally fairly easily feel dissatisfied, and it comes across in a kind of a cynical way. So Sankaran writes, the situation for somebody who needs the tubercular miasm is it's oppressive. My weakness is being exploited, and I feel suffocated, caught, trapped, and there's no way out. The gap is narrowing. I want to break free. I want to get out. I want to escape. So the tubercular miasm, tuberculosis is a disease of the lungs, and the tubercular miasm really represents a lot of diseases of the lungs where it feels like there's a suffocating energy around the chest, heart, and lungs. ADHD, absolutely, a lot of ADHD where you're kind of like, needing sensory input, always kind of going here, going there. The tubercular remedies really fit a lot of animal remedies, and a lot of animal remedies fit ADHD, right? Again, ADHD is you could probably come up with, an acute malarial cancer, tubercular, all of these miasms to fit ADHD, but the idea of, this restlessness, this need to kind of go and escape, this feeling of suffocation of the lungs, this compression, don't cage me in. You know, so often in sensation process, when you ask someone to close their eyes and say, imagine your kid when they're the most stressed, how do they feel? Trapped. Trapped. That feeling of trapped. Okay, trapped. Go into it. So that could represent the tubercular miasm, or like often like an animal remedy that feels trapped. Someone described an anxiety type feeling of chest pressure. Is that different from tubercular compression? So yeah, I mean, clearly you can have, you know, chest and lung diseases that are psoric. You know, you could have this like, you know, kind of like wheezy long-term cough that needs Hepar sulf, you know, because you're cold and you haven't kind of, you've been working too long and too hard and you need, you know, Hepar sulf and Serenum. You know, you've got like anxiousness in the chest and a cough that is, you know, psychotic in nature. A psychotic cough would be like full of phlegm that's green, like there's an infection, but you're still out at night and partying. Um, so it can be, you know, the tubercular feeling, tubercular people truly at their core have weak lungs. And so what does it mean when you have weak lungs? It kind of means that you have low immunity, poor boundaries, catch things easily, but you're also kind of connecting. The tubercular people, kind of, you think of phosphorus at its core, they're connecting. They feel things very closely because they have less boundaries, and they can be very acutely aware. They're less in their container. You know, a really like thickly built football player, psoric person who's really like a calcarb is really contained, and they only see things through their lens. Whereas a tubercular person who kind of has maybe a really slim body and poor boundaries, they connect to everything around them. They're more like the air element than the solid earth element. Hep ourself help heal my son's cough tick. Yeah. So, you know, tuberculosis, when people had tuberculosis, life was short. You got the diagnosis, and then you got, you know, whatever, you know, 10, 20 years to live, but you knew that you were going to die. You know, and so you like went up into the mountains, and you went, you know, to these sanatoriums, these places where people, you know, just breathe fresh air and did the key to healing tuberculinum was doing nothing and drinking like and eating heavy food and like milk and meat and breathing fresh mountain air, right? And I think that probably to some degree could still be the key for a lot of us. Sit and do nothing, soak in the sun, and eat like really heavy grounding foods. Yeah, I'm sure sanatoriums are haunted now. That's, they're probably full of mold. Um, Tuberculinum and the tubercular miasm is all very much about mold as well. So if you think about it, it's like, you know, I like to think of some of these miasms in a way as also a house being built. And so it's like the psoric miasm is like, you know, my house isn't fully built, but I need to keep working to build my house. The psychotic miasm is like, my house is built, it's perfect, it's beautiful, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, I even have a couple maids and servants. The cancer miasm is like when I'm trying to please too many people by holding too many events at my house, right? The tubercular miasm is my house starting to get deteriorated, and I don't have like the money and the resources to take care of my house anymore, and mold is growing in the walls. And so once the mold grows, I've got to leave. I got to book it and find another place to live. And then leprosy is when everything starts to fall apart, and syphilinum is like your haunted house, right? Do they have poor appetite? Tubercular people can have massive appetites, or picky appetites. That's an interesting, you know, I think that could be pretty variable. From what I know, people who are tubercular can have really high metabolisms. They're like the hummingbird people in general who can, you know, eat a lot and burn it all really quickly. You know, that's kind of my sense of them. Like when you get to the stage of tubercular and leprosy miasm, you're like, oh, happy birthday, Christy. Your birthday too. Um, you're getting at the point where it's like you're no longer trying to like build and bulk up your body. You're just like taking in food so that you can burn it in the moment. I'm this way, you know, my daughter's this way. She just like, as she'll, if she's low on energy, she eats, she gets energy, she goes, and then she doesn't actually keep the food on the body. Like she doesn't like actually store a lot. Um, so that that's what, you know, tubercular are generally these kind of like slim, gangly kind of people who can kind of do a lot of intense stuff. Um, you know, the psychotic person is a little bit more well built, you know, a little more solid in their body. Um, you know, the way that Paul Herskew talks about it is like the Metarainum guy, he like falls in love with his soulmate, you know, no, he goes to Nepal, you know, treks around for 3 months, you know, finds his soulmate, moves there. And the tubercular person, you know, goes to Nepal, treks around, comes back with like 5 infections, finds their soulmate, but dies really fast before they can marry them. Something like that. You know, it's like this tubercular person doesn't have quite the bodily vitality, and so they really get sick easily. My son shakes his knee constantly, super thin. Yeah. Yeah, and it's that energy, you know, if you think of tubercular people as kind of ungrounded, you know, and so they need to be a little more, they need more earth in their body. They need more consolidation. And then sometimes homeopathy isn't the medicine for that. Sometimes homeopathy can shift the energy, but homeopathy is not going to build you up. My like choice medicine for building up yin and building up resources and really strung out people is Chinese herbs, finding a really good Chinese herbalist, and diet, you know, eating lots of like, you know, seafood and fish oil and meat and oils. And this is like the Vata person. Yeah. Um, would you think that someone who doesn't absorb their food or absorb fats fit this miasm, high fecal fat? Um, could be, but could also be kind of like malarial miasm with parasites. That to me, when I think of that, I think of like gallbladder. And when I think of gallbladder, I think of kind of malarial miasm. My mother had tuberculosis during World War II. Is this something I would want to clear? You know, I would think about what was her experience in World War II? You know, what, you know, maybe you didn't know, but really trying to feel into um, who she was and what she was experiencing. Now things skip a generation as well too. So, you know, these miasms, sometimes they go direct into the direct next generation, or they skip and go into the following generation. Um, but I would say if there was weak lungs, you know, you were born with, you know, respiratory distress, possibly, you know. So hectic, intense, time is short, there's a lot to get done. I was born, my natural constitution is tubercular. And you know, the only thing I wanted to do when I was a little kid was travel all around the world and see like all of the countries. And I wanted to be like a stewardess. That was my choice. And at some point in my 20s, I recognized I'd done a ton of travel, how unhealthy it was for me. And once I become a homeopath, I really worked on healing that aspect of me, knowing how unhealthy it was. Okay. Yeah. Miasmatic prescribing by Dr. Subrata Kumasi Banerjee. And my guess is it's along these lines because most of the Indian homeopaths are following Sankaran's system right here. And this is Sankaran's system. You know, there's other systems out there. This is what I believe to be the contemporary most used system of miasms by homeopaths right now. And then leprosy miasm, okay? So this is kind of a useful miasm. It's hard sometimes to differentiate between tubercular and syphilitic miasms. But this is a space kind of in between where this is, you know, this is a picture supposedly of someone with leprosy, or that's what their face was supposed to look like. But the feeling that it's a hopeless situation. I've been forsaken, abandoned, I'm alone. And but it's not like death, right? It's like I'm living like in this way, kind of like a homeless person. I'm doomed for life. Like I've got a stigma and I'm doomed for life. And they were kind of people with leprosy were shut into these colonies where they all had to live with each other. And so this is maybe the state of, you know, people who have to be in psych wards for the rest of their life. It's a very leprosy miasm. Isolated, you know, there's this feeling of I'm disgusting, people don't like me, I'm despised. You know, tearing at myself, biting at myself. You know, I would say, you know, the attitudes of poop smearing and like self-abuse are kind of here in the leprosy miasm. The words that Sankaran uses for this is disgust, great contempt, mutilation, intense hopelessness, dirty, tears at himself, bites himself, outcast, repulsive, loathing, castaway. Right. And so Hura is probably the main remedy. Skin picking, I would say, you know, you just have to kind of keep all of this in perspective, because skin picking can be like a very psychotic thing. You know, it's like, oh, I'm picking at this like thing that nobody's looking at, and I'm going to cover it up with some makeup. You know, that's pretty psychotic. Skin picking could be like a malarial, you know, thing or if it's like literally like taking razors and cutting in, that's kind of more like leprosy miasm. Actually, the razor thing is pretty syphilitic too. So syphilitic compared to leprosy, I mean, Sankaran writes, syphilitic is destruction, homicide, suicide. Anytime you have suicide, like true suicidal feelings, that's syphilitic. That's like, I want to die, you know? And sometimes syphilitic people do not come into homeopathy because they're too hopeless, you know? And so getting them past the point where they feel like they want to die, or that like life is hopeless, or they're in the suicidal state, that's your main objective when you're dealing with somebody in the syphilitic state, is getting them not to want to die. So that covers all of the miasms from the contemporary perspective of Sankaran. These are the words that I talked about dealing with each miasm, and so you guys can kind of feel into the words. Acute is run for your life. Typhoid is sink or swim. Sora is getting the job done. Always the student. Giving up easily, lack of confidence. Ringworm is if I try and succeed, great. If I don't succeed, it's no big problem. The issue comes and goes. You know, this is totally like when Ryan was doing screenwriting with our friend. It was like they'd write a screenplay and send it in. It was like, let's do another one. Let's try it again. Let's try it. No big deal. Malarial miasm is I have to bear with this. I have to stick with this and just complain, get harassed. Psychosis is fake it till you make it. Cancer is overdoing perfectionism, burning out your adrenals. Tubercular is life is short, live it up, rebel without a cause. You know, tubercular people, they don't care about the rules as much. It's like they're no longer about, you know, building things up. They're about tearing things down. They're about like kind of like, let's destroy these rules that make life boring. let's destroy, you know, what it is that you're telling me to do, because it's just, what's the point of this? You know, whereas the Stoic person is like, I've got to live by the rules, because that's, you know, how we live and create, you know, a useful life. Um, Leprosy, miasm, is being a hermit, being an outcast. And syphilitic is the situation is hopeless. Sinking ship, I'll do the best that I can, you know. Is hiding in your room, never wanting to leave the house, almost agoraphobic, the leprosy, miasm? A bit, maybe, you know, it depends. So kids who want to leave the house and are agoraphobic, that could come from a place of weakness. So a lot of cali carb. You know, a kid with a cough who has really weak immune system and wants to stay at home and read all day could need cali carb, you know, and often does, cali carb or calc carb, you know, or calc mur, very kind of soric remedy states. If you're in your room and you don't want to socialize and you're doing all these weird rituals that you can't get out of, and that make you like really antisocial, it's like way more syphilitic. So see how that there's a range in there. So a lot of the diseases we're working with, Lyme, ASD, could be all of these. I don't know if this is a useful diagram for you guys, but on the left with the blue, these are kind of more of the miasms that are about self-preservation, and these are more of the miasms that are about kind of destruction. And we can move. I'll kind of show another example of that. We can move through them. So how do we find the miasms? You know, how do we, I want you guys all, now that we've like learned this, we want to think of a stressful situation and how we responded to that stress and how intense that response was, what the pace of that response was, how desperate or how hopeful that person was. So let's do that before I kind of go through this stuff here. I want to do a little guided meditation with you. So are you guys up for this? All right, so just close your eyes. I'd like you guys just to close your eyes. And just take a deep breath in and out. And I want you to imagine a time in your life, either recently or in the past, and it could be when you had your babies, when you were really stressed. Like it was the feeling of stress was on you. And I want you to imagine your response to that stress. And the words you said, the attitude that you had, and how intense was it? What was the intensity of your behavior? And how quickly did you need or feel like this was going to be resolved? Or did you feel like it was going to be resolved? Did you feel hopeful or just beside yourself and hopeless? How did you survive through that stress? What strategies? Did you go off alone? Did you enlist help? And when you got through it, how did it feel? How did you feel? And just taking a deep breath in and out. Just remembering that feeling, asking yourself, opening yourself up to what miasm could this be? What miasm is this? What survival strategy do I have in life? All right, and now you can open your eyes again. And then we're just going to look through some examples. I think what I'm going to do, because I feel like this was a lot. Do you guys feel like this was a lot? Is I have here miasms and how they apply to plants. Okay, no, it was great. Okay, great. And miasms and how they apply to minerals, and miasms and how they apply to animals. So I'll just go through that unless you guys are feeling overwhelmed by it. Okay. So we've talked about basically, here, let me put the notes back up again. I could use some examples. All right, thank you. Let's do that. Oops. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. Stories are how you learn best. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Erin. All right. So these are going to be all examples. I want to go through these examples of mostly of cases of special needs kids. So some of you guys will really, really grasp this. So here's an example of the acute miasm needing belladonna for that acute miasm. So he has the acute miasms, the only miasm that doesn't have like a disease attached to it, but the disease is something's going to kill me. This is the something's going to kill me miasm, right? And so like kids on the spectrum that are in this state, any little stress freaks them out. So this is if it's getting bright out, if I drive a different way, if anything is canceled, if I change my routine, if it's sunny out, it scares him to death. You know, he freaks out. So the list of phobias and fears is immense. We're stuck at home because something might startle him. Even a chicken outside making a noise could startle him, and it's debilitating, right? And so seizure states, this type of fear is going to respond really well to acute remedies. It's like everything's in this kind of shock state. You get that? Okay, so typhoid. So this is a typhoid example of, this was a mom who was a dentist while she was pregnant and needed Nux vomica, and so did her little girl. This remedy, her girl had an ASD diagnosis. This remedy plus coffee and some gallbladder support and some liver support resolve this child's ASD. Her feeling while she was pregnant was, I was stressed out and worried that the baby would not be healthy. I worked a lot. I worked 4 days a week, long hours on my feet. Work was so busy and fast paced, and the way I work, I have to have one surgery for 3 hours where I am super focused. While working, that's the only time I feel acceptable, as if I'm super busy and focused. The things I do are technique sensitive, so if I lose focus, everything could go wrong. Work was my relief. On days off, I had to be in bed doing nothing, not even moving. I couldn't even watch TV. So she would do this like intense work, and then she'd just go home and do nothing, okay? Generally, average, healthy person who shouldn't have been doing this work while pregnant. Okay, does that make sense how that's like a Nux vomica? Like it's like this intense thing she has to get through, and then once she was done, she was like, okay. So Brionia is this way. Brionia is like, work hard, work hard, work hard, and then I get home and sit on the couch and don't bother me. Don't just leave me alone. Right? That's typhoid miasm. Psoric miasm. This was a girl who needed Brionia followed by calc carb. She's pretty healthy, not a lot of colds. If she gets a cold, it'll be a sniffly nose, a lot of anxiety where she fears the wind, fears monsters. I believe this girl didn't ever really want to grow up and leave her parents, afraid of the dark, doesn't have good coping skills, uncertain. Says she doesn't ever want to leave our house. She wants to live with her parents forever. Um, so, that's this kind of girl. She had asthma, and her asthma was treated with some bryonia and kelp card. Okay. Average kids. Ringworm case here. I really want you to hear Ryan's case of the ringworm as I found a calcarea silicata case for ringworm, and this was just, I'm uncomfortable and I deal with things, but I don't. It's kind of like in between space. Okay. Malarial miasm, you will see a lot because these people love to complain. I was depressed. So this was a case of a woman who was a lawyer while pregnant, and her boss bullied her because she was a female, and he didn't think that she should be taking work off. This was in Asia, so it was like way even more sexism. And she was crying every day. He was belittling me. I was angry with him, not happy. He didn't want to treat me fairly. If you need to go back at 10, it doesn't matter. You can, we had a big fight. I feel I could kill him. Anyways, she had a big fight with her boss, and then she vomited in her car and passed out. And then she got a medical leave. So, it's just this kind of like bullying, punishing feeling. The daughter had autism in this case, and she was just like, leave me alone, like, don't bother me, and she'd be crunching over her belly like it was in pain all the time. So the feeling was like, I'm in pain, don't bother me, leave me alone, and the pain would like kind of come and go. And the remedy was colosynthis, which is bitter cucumber. Psychosis is, here's a mom who's another lawyer. I've got a lawyer theme going on here. A lot of these professions, nurses, lawyers, dentists, just seems like, wow, not a good place to be while pregnant. I'm a control freak. There's no room for mistakes. I was a lawyer. I did IPOs, and on the day of the listing, nothing could go wrong. But you just can't prepare for a kid. You don't have timetables. They just do what they want, and you have unexpected contingencies. My baby would be unconsolable at night, and it was the end of the world for me. So for this person, her baby crying, she just didn't know what to do. You couldn't control, you couldn't figure it out. This actually sounds a very carcinosin miasm too, but I gave this person Thuya. I didn't even trust my domestic partner. One night, we tried everything, and then we knocked on my helper's door, and I just gave my baby to her, and she calmed him down. So I still don't trust her, but I let her do the job. Okay. Now there's a feeling of a glass wall between my child and me. He's like living in a glass jar, and I can't reach out to him. I need to stay strong, but I can't do it anymore. If he doesn't recover when I die, who will care for him? So that was a Thuya case. Needing to be a certain way, needing to be tough and strong on the outside, not really feeling like you can do it, asking, kind of covering up and having somebody else do it for you. Does that make sense how that's psychotic? Cancer miasm. He's from a chaotic family, alcoholics, Mennonite, Inuit. His mother was abandoned at birth. She's nutty, all this chaos. The kid loves art, gymnastics, cartwheels, but things have to be his way. Okay. This was a kid who had pandas. and he got better with lac maternum and carcinosin. And he was just flipping out because he was so sensitive to like too many things in his environment, and he would like have rages and just crawl up in his bed, and he just couldn't deal with the world. And the rages weren't out of anger; it was rage out of overwhelm, oversensitivity. Yeah, the milk remedies are actually very psychotic in cancer miasm, all the lac remedies. Okay. Tubercular miasm, this was, pregnancy of two parents who were in the Peace Corps, right? They had a lot of gut stuff in the Peace Corps, but the father had respiratory distress syndrome when he was born, and then the mother's children, two of her children, also had respiratory distress syndrome right when they were born and had to go to the NICU right away, treated with antibiotics and oxygen. So clearly weak lungs. Weak lungs leading you to want to join the Peace Corps. I wanted to join the Peace Corps. I think it was a good thing my parents made me not go, though. I think I would have been lost. Yeah, I was accepted. I was going to go to Africa. I think I would have gotten some sort of parasites and gone pretty downhill. I don't know. Or maybe I'd be running an orphanage in Africa by now. This kid was super tubercular, super smart, very advanced, learned all the things he needed to learn very quickly. These tubercular kids can be very precocious, but destructive, tearing pages out of books, hitting, aggressive, reactive airway disease, not friendly, rude, self-centered, so. Tuberculinum is an amazing remedy for special needs kids. It's just huge. ADHD, behavioral disorders, immune issues related to behavioral disorders. Leprosy miasm, I have a HURA case that fits that, and it's like this case of this family where the dad was like kind of isolated and kicked out of the family, but he did this like disgusting thing where he would love to pick his boogers and smear the snot on his skin and then let it dry and then like lick it, like really gross stuff. But I didn't even know this about the father until I'm treating the daughter, and the daughter was doing this like picking the nose and pulling these goo balls out and like pulling them and like playing with it and like rubbing and liking it and like sitting in the corner doing this and like being really disgusting. And I gave HURA for that, and it really, helped. HURA is actually for this like sticky, elasticy feeling too. It's in the latex family, so. But according to Scholten's periodic table of elements, sulfur falls within the leprosy miasm too, that like super messy state, just like, kind of rotting. This was a girl who needed sulfur. Her front teeth were rotted. She was hooked on sugar. She was really into like things being disgusting, the smell of cows being messy, so that has a little bit of a leprosy miasm energy to it. And then syphilinum example. So this is an example of, the syphilitic miasm, the heavy metals are considered syphilitic. So lead, gold, platinum even, that place. Actually also aluminum, all of those kind of toxic metals are considered syphilitic. And when we know that in healing, we know that we need to get the metals out, that the metals have a destructive quality to them. So mercury, yes, exactly. So this was an aurum muriaticum case where it was a mother. Yes, this was a mother. This was a mother who was also a lawyer. But her child was had an autism diagnosis. If we refuse him anything, he gets aggressive, tries to hit us, bite us, throws on the floor, comes after us. The delivery, I was not myself. I bled. I didn't talk much. I had a high fever. I didn't talk much. I was worried about survival. I didn't talk, didn't eat. I just ate vegetables. Felt it was hopeless. There was no reason for me to live. I felt like it was my fault. My body wouldn't let the baby live. I felt that my body failed me and everybody failed me. And my body wasn't strong enough to let the baby live. I felt like God let me down. So that was a feeling she had while pregnant, like already feeling like a failure and that the baby might not live. I had pain in my heart. I was constantly talking to myself, why am I here? What have I done wrong? I wanted to be alone. So that kind of isolated syphilitic feeling, hopeless. I wanted everything to be over. I didn't want to wait. I wanted to die. It was my fault. I had an incompetent cervix. I felt like my body was not made to fit me. I felt like I was going against nature, and I felt bad about going against nature. Right? So you hear this kind of the syphilitic voice in that. So those are the examples of those miasms that we talked about today and last week. So we have, we're going a little over time. I can cover how these miasms fit plants, animals, and minerals, or we can talk about that next week. How do you guys feel? You want to keep going or save it for next week? Anybody? Next week? Okay. All right, that's cool. Because I'm kind of feeling, some of us are gopher. I'm good to stay with it. Okay. What I'll do is I'll cover it, and if you need to go to sleep tonight, you can watch it on the recording, and I'm going to cover it again next week, kind of like what we did this week. So I'll overlap it and cover it again. Okay? So this will be kind of a quick 20-minute, how these apply, and then we'll talk about it more next week. All right? So in Sankaran's schema, he creates all these kind of charts. And in the Book of Life, I have charts too. But he developed the miasms as they apply to the plants. Like he wrote a book called Plants 1 and Plants 2. And he basically divided all the plants up according to miasm. And I haven't talked about the plants yet, but in general, in his book and the way that I would teach it and how it is in the Book of Life, each plant family has a particular sensation associated with it. So the anacardium family, the rustox family, has a sensation of being tight and constricted, and I want to break out of this tightness and constriction. Like my joints feel tight and I want to like break out of it a bit. And so each plant family has a sensation. And so you can find that sensation, and then when you find the miasm, say if you're like, okay, I want an anacardium plant, but I know that the miasm needs to be malarial, you can look it up. So he has it like all of the miasms across the top and all of the families across the left, and it's a chart. And so you can find the plant that fits that miasm and that sensation. And it's a really wonderful system. You don't really need to repertorize in that way if you know what the sensation is and you know what the miasm is. Okay, so if you're like, here, let's see, give an example below. So here's a person who had a bowel obstruction. It was really, really intense. I went 4 to 5 times to the ER. It was really painful. The feeling was heavy and twisting. I asked the doctor for a C-section. I was bending over, stretching and squeezing my tummy, twisting side to side. Intestines were swollen and twisting and stretching. Okay, so yes, plants 1 and 2. Yeah, and so clearly the sensation that we want to heal is twisting. The person kept saying twisting, twisting, twisting. It was twisting side to side. Okay. So I'm like, okay, well, what plant family has twisting associated? And I kind of go through and I'm looking and I'm feeling and I'm muscle testing and I see, oh, Dioscoraceae. The feeling that Dioscoraceae is the same family as Dioscorea, which is wild yam. The sensation of twisting, coiling, uncoiling, stretching, pulled. Okay. So then I'm like, oh, I think she could use a remedy from the Dioscoraceae family. So then I look in that family, and then I think, okay, well, there's a remedy in the acute miasm and the malarial miasm. And so I'm going to think, what miasm could this person need? What's her main fear was not of her boss making her stressed. It was bad. I worked at a cashier, and if $2 was missing, he took it from me. If I was too slow, he yelled at me like I was a little kid. I was yelled at by my dad. I wasn't happy at all. In front of the customers, he would yell at me. It was not good. Malarial miasm, right? So I want something in the Dioscoraceae family in the malarial miasm, and the remedy for that is Dioscorea. And Dioscorea is a remedy for colic where you have twisting pains. You know, it also is this family of being kind of, or this feeling of being like oppressed. So that's how we apply the miasms to plants. You guys get that? So here are some more examples. Okay, so the Papaveraceae family is the opium plant family. Okay, it's the same as morphine, opium, codeine, right? So the feeling and the sensation of the plants in this family is intense pain, feeling intense pain, or numbing out to the pain, like blocking the pain, right? And so you have actually different, if you are like, okay, somebody needs the opium family, but what miasm are they? Are they in a really destructive miasm? Are they in the cancer miasm? And if you figure out that miasm, you can look up the plant that's associated. So morphinum is the acute remedy within the Papaveraceae family. Chelidonium is the malarial miasmatic remedy within the Papaveraceae family. Sanguinaria is the psychotic remedy within the Papaveraceae family. You know, and so they all have problems with pain. Chelidonium whines and bosses and has issues with, you know, being bossy or being whining from the pain. Sanguinaria hides their pain. Sanguinaria is one of my personal top most important remedies. I used to be so empathic, but I would feel everybody's pain, and pain really freaked me out, you know. And it was like I literally got could faint from watching people in pain. But what I would do is I would go and hide under my covers in bed and just get away and try to be, you know, I'd be in the world treating people. And this was when I first started practicing, and I'd be treating all of these patients, and then I'd go home and I'd hide in bed, and I'd get these massive migraines. They're incredibly painful, and I needed sanguinaria. And I found out I needed sanguinaria because I treated someone who needed it. And then I was like, hey, I have the same state. And that's what can happen, right? So that's how we correlate the miasms with the plants. The plants, Solanaceae is the nightshade. So that's belladonna, tabacum, stramonium. You can find out, you know, oh, the nightshade family of remedies is so good for my kid, but I don't think they need acute belladonna anymore. You can look and you can see, there's this one autistic case I treated where a girl needed tons of belladonna and stramonium, always had dilated pupils. And we got her through that, but then she was in the tubercular miasm. She needed tuberculinum. And finally I gave her atropinum, which is an alkaloid of the Solanaceae family. And that ended up being an amazing remedy for her and her lungs. So you can kind of go down the list, and we're not really learning about the sensations of each plant family, but that's how it works. Get it? So it works within Sankaran's system. Other homeopaths who teach about plants might not teach about them. You might say, some people may say belladonna is a syphilitic, they may like say different miasms for different plants. So, and then the minerals, can you say what those other plant families are? Well, there's a lot of plant families. We haven't even touched on learning them yet in this class. I'm putting these plant families down just as examples so that you can see how the miasms apply. Really, after I teach the plants eventually, I should redo this class and talk about the miasms again. So these were Papaveraceae, which is the opium family. Solanaceae is the nightshade. Compositae is the same family as Arnica and Senna. It's the daisy family. And Loganaceae is the family of Ignatia and Nux vomica and strychnine. So, okay. All right. So the minerals is very, very fascinating how this all pulls together, because you guys, if you were with me last quarter, you learned the minerals and the stages and the series, and how we move towards success and we move towards destruction. And that's very much what the miasms are about. The miasms are associated with these stages that go down the periodic table of elements. And on the back side of Schulten's periodic table along the bottom, he lists miasms. So malaria is considered stage 5. Psychosis is considered stage 10, which is success. Cancer is considered stage 12, which is the stage of overdoing and repetition. Tuberculosis is considered stage 15, which is falling off the cliff. Leprosy is the stage of decay, stage 16, and syphilis is stage 17, the stage of abandonment, right? And so that's pretty amazing too, because if you're like, wow, this person's so syphilitic, you could look at stage 17 remedies and think, oh, well, maybe they could use like a chlorum or iodium. Schulten says he doesn't use the word miasm though, because miasms are so varied in how they're talked about in homeopathy. Schulten came up with even more miasms, okay? So at the bottom of this periodic table of elements, he has the mycosis miasm, comes after the cancer miasm, and mycosis is the miasm of fungal infections, right? And so he puts that as stage 13. And the words associated with the fungal or mycosis miasm are antique, obsolete, dated, nostalgic, suspicious, moldy, musty. And that is the remedies of gallium and indium, right? He came up with, he's got a polio miasm as well. And he came up with a pertussis miasm as stage 8. There's also talk, I've also seen AIDS as a miasm. AIDS is supposed to be, somewhere between kind of tuberculinum and syphilitic, I believe. So there are other ones that other homeopaths toss out there. And then lastly, miasms apply to the animals too. So, most of the snake remedies are considered syphilitic because they're destructive. They have this poison associated with them, and they can kill you. Not all snake remedies are though. I definitely find the grass snake or a sea snake or different snakes that are not. If you have a tubercular patient, the energy of tuberculinum is super animal. So almost all the animal remedies could fit the tubercular miasm in a way. Life is short, go, go, go. especially the insects, the spiders, the birds. Insects, spiders, and birds, all these kind of flying and jumping and life is short, neurotic animals fit tubercular. Well, I haven't bought plants 1, 2, 3, or 4 from Vermeulen, but I used to use them because I knew somebody who had them. So if you can afford them, go for it. Let's see. The mammals, the lac remedies are considered psychotic. Like it's like, I am what I am, but there's this part of me that's disgusting that I'm embarrassed by. You know, there's this kind of embarrassed by, you know, being an animal or this side of them that isn't, you know, they don't feel as quite civilized or something. Often the people who need mammal remedies are psychotic. They're hiding that part of themselves. Lion is said to be syphilitic though. And then the mollusks, like the clams and the, you know, octopuses and stuff out there, seem to kind of vary in the miasms that they are. Okay. I think, wow, Santa Claus is getting you homeopathy presents. That's awesome. So that's it for tonight. Thank you guys so much. I hope that that was cool and you learned a lot and not overwhelming. But next week, I'm going to like really go into more detail on carcinosin and tuberculinum and some of the other ones and re-review this material on how it applies to plants, animals, and minerals. Do you think miasms will shift as diseases shift over time? Like will Lyme maybe take over as a more prominent type of miasm in lieu of polio and syphilis? I do feel like as a contemporary homeopath that, yeah, we should rename some of these miasms. Like typhoid miasm should maybe be, you know, influenza or Coxsackie miasm. And the Lyme disease is challenging because it fits a lot, but I would put Lyme's disease somewhere between the, you know, syphilitic and, you know, most homeopaths consider Lyme disease to be syphilitic when it goes chronic. Mind blowing. Wow, that's awesome. So, you know, I do believe that there will always be new diseases to replace old ones if we think we're killing off the old ones. We thought we killed off, like, you know, measles, but it came back. We thought we killed off syphilis, but it's kind of coming back. But really what we can never kill off is these tendencies, these delusions that we have, that we're less than perfect, that we need these survival strategies, that we live on a planet where we have to, like, you know, do all of these things in order to survive, that ends up just like creating more mess in our bodies than we need. Okay, it's total roadmap and it all links together. Okay, so let's just close our eyes and just take a deep breath in and out. And just come back into our hearts and feel joy, feel love in your heart for homeopathy, for roadmaps, for learning, for evolution, for healing. Feel the love that comes up in you as you're loving this process, loving this learning, loving this community, loving what's available. And all of the patterns that kind of show up for you, taking a step back from them and smiling and not taking yourself so seriously and just loving them too. They are what they are. We forgive them. We let them go. They are what they are. And they help us get through life. They're tools, they're strategies. And just imagining life's stresses and all that you have in front of you right now. And just opening up your heart and just imagining swimming through all that stress with just an ease, a grace, and a flow of being connected to your heart, being connected to your intuition, and being connected to your environment. And just taking a deep breath in and out. Thank you guys so much. I will stop the recording and